Hello, it's Cried here, with the real patch 1.14 notes for Elden Ring. Some would say that there's a correlation between my uploads and patch notes, and I would say that you might, unfortunately, be right, as much as I would like to deny it. Anyways, the final boss has been nerfed. A tone down in his difficulty is fair, as I do think most people would call him the most difficult boss by far, with a few exceptionally annoying moves like the cross slash. I'm sure there are many people who can proudly proclaim themselves as a two-time pre-nerf Radon Slayer since they nerfed both Radons. Onto the important information, starting with the PvP exclusive changes. Backhand blades have their damage reduced. PvP multipliers that were originally 1 times were reduced to 0.9 or 0.85, while multipliers that were 0.9 were reduced to 0.81 or 0.77. Basically, a 10 to 15% damage reduction to perhaps the strongest weapon class in PvP. Not unexpected, just like the scatter shot throw nerf. The PvP damage multiplier for this weapon art is reduced from 0.8 to 0.75, which is a 12.5% damage reduction. But perhaps more importantly is the removal of potential headshots with this skill. The headshot stun that could happen randomly was really annoying for how frequently it occurred. Good riddance for sure. Discus Hurl is another weapon art that is way too spammable. Instead of nerfing the speed though, FromSoft decided to lower the damage level of the weapon art from 1 to 0, so you basically won't get stunned anymore, even if you still take damage. Definitely makes it a lot easier to trade positive against this cheap and annoying Ash. For the Weed Cutter, it seems like the hyper armor for the follow-up attacks has been reduced. For PvP, the effective poise you're getting is reduced from 600 to 375 for both of the 2 follow-up hits, which is still a lot. And the first hit is still 600 effective poise, so I doubt this nerf is enough to change much. Now, onto general balance adjustments, starting with the increase in attack speed to uncharged heavy attacks. The speed change varies greatly, and includes even unique movesets of the weapon classes. And yes, some heavy attacks are even faster than light attacks now. In general, it seems like the speed change ranges from 14% to 23% increase in speed. I definitely appreciate buffing heavy attacks, as uncharged heavies are not used as often on most weapons. Light attack or charged heavies are more widely used, but some of the buffs definitely feels a bit too much for something meant to be a harder hitting move. While this change is in the general section, it is more relevant for PvP. If you've PvP'd since the DLC has released, you've probably at least seen somebody offhand a great katana, especially the Rakshasa. Chaining into your main hand with an offhand great katana is now a whole 10 frames slower, requiring 37 frames instead of 27. However, it seems like FromSoft forgot to change the Rakshasa's offhand frame data because it uses a different animation with its unique hyper armor. The Rakshasas somehow retained its old 27 frames, so the great katana that I'm pretty sure the nerf was targeted for miraculously went untouched. Let's just hope someone at FromSoft sees this. They buffed the base damage of both hand-to-hand arts by the same amount, so all infusions got a nice bonus of roughly 8% increase in attack. Here are some examples. Yes, thank you FromSoft. I thought waiting an entire patch before making my hand-to-hand arts video was enough. But of course, all my numbers are off by 8% now. The recovery time of some normal attacks has been sped up by 1 or 2 frames. Not too important nor noticeable, but nice to have. I think it's just to make the combo feel a bit more fluid. Next, the Colossal Sword weapon type is not buffed. Following tradition, the patch note needs a few mistakes. This is actually referring to colossal weapons like the Giant Crusher and not colossal swords. The move distance has been increased, which will help you land hits much easier. But the next part of the note is wrong again. The rolling and crouch attack of colossal weapons has been buffed by 2 frames, not the first normal attack. Granted, the first normal attack has been changed as well. The hyper armor comes out 1 frame faster, but this is obviously not as impactful as the patch note would suggest. The backhand blade's crouch attack for its one-handed, two-handed, and power-stanced version are all nerfed from 11 frames to 13 frames. To make it simpler for you to understand though, it just means that it has been nerfed from too fast to fast, which is to say that this is still a powerful move. Some small and medium shields have their physical negation and guard boost tuned up. Honestly, you aren't going to be performing many blocks with a shield that doesn't have 100% physical negation, but the guard boost is definitely the more ridiculous part of this buff. Here are just a few examples. Allow me to help you further contextualize why this buff might have been a bit too much. Here is the brass shield with its new guard boost of 75. That puts it on par with great shields like the Cross Tree Tower Shield and the Eclipse Crest Great Shield, both of which requires roughly twice as much strength and weighs over twice as much as the brass shield. This puts the brass shield at a higher guard boost than the majority of the great shields. I thought the point of the Swift Spear is to be swift. It seems like my understanding must be lacking, as a bunch of recoveries have been nerfed. Jokes aside, there's enough of a delay after the attack, and this spear wasn't good already, so it didn't need this change. Smith script daggers can now be thrown further. Save for a few moves, the range is extended by 23%. Rellana's twin blades scaling has been changed. Well, I caught the weapon bugged without really explaining it well in my light greatsword video, so my bad. Essentially, the weapon has only 2 damage types per weapon, while its attack seems like it's balanced like both blades have all 3 damage types. Also, for some odd reason, some DLC weapons aren't using the standard elemental damage curve, even when they have elemental damage. This was one of them. Therefore, this change is more like a bug fix, as they shifted the damage curve from physical to elemental, like the regular magic, flame, and sacred infusions that other weapons already use. This changes its scaling power from 66% of its total at 50 intelligence and faith to 80%. It's not a huge difference though, but I'll take the buff. Additionally, its weapon art is also buffed later down in the patch notes. The range of the light attack follow-up has been increased, with the last hit going the furthest. The poise damage of the bullet portion of the weapon art has also been increased, and the light follow-up attack now executes 10% faster. The bullet portion of the heavy follow-up attack also has its poise damage increased. As for this line about adjusting damage animation, it is talking about changing the diminishing hit stun for the first 2 swings of the heavy follow-up. It no longer has any diminishing hit stun, which is a small buff under the right circumstances. I literally just talked about this talisman with a cameo extension trick in my light greatsword video. I'm very glad the Rellana's cameo got the twin blade talisman treatment. It was definitely way too weak, and the buff certainly makes it well worth it for stance type weapon arts now. Next, both Sword of Light and Sword of Darkness have their lengthy weapon arts sped up. Not only do the bullets come out faster, you can recover faster too. Over 4 seconds of standing still was way too long, so these swords really needed this. Obsidian Lamina's weapon art, Dynastic Sickle Play, has been buffed, but stamina consumption is certainly not part of it. The first follow-up attack moves in further, while the total poise damage of the follow-ups are increased. The first 2 hits of the second follow-up attack from the weapon art also does not have any diminishing returns on hit stun now. Shield Strike has been nerfed when chaining from other actions. Unfortunately, as this is a modification done to other unmentioned attacks into this specific weapon art, I'm unable to track down the precise changes. Devonia's Vortex got a nice buff as well. The damage is only slightly increased, but the radius increase will make the weapon art easier to land. The hyper armor is increased by 150, and it also comes out 5 frames faster. Finally, the last line is yet again talking about not having any diminishing returns on hit stun for the initial hit. Brillana's Twin Moons got a much needed buff to the first 2 AoEs, which were way too small. The second hit's reduced knockback means that the final hit can more reliably land as well, so this spell can be properly used as an AoE clearing tool now. And perhaps the biggest buff is actually an unlisted change in the patch notes. This spell now grants 300 hyper armor starting from the 19th frame of its cast time. Because of its melee nature, this hyper armor helps you succeed in actually casting the spell. Crucible Thorn's damage is buffed, and the charged version definitely received a greater buff. They're incentivizing you to charge the incantation. The stamina damage buff only applies to the charged version as well. Still not the most impressive of incantations, but definitely nice. Aspects of the Crucible Bloom also received a buff, including the size of the hitbox, which allows it to land more easily on smaller targets. The damage and recoveries are sped up by 3 frames, so it isn't actually much faster. To nobody's surprise, I hope, the Divine Bird Feathers got a buff. Its minimum delay is decreased, and the attack range is increased. But am I supposed to be impressed with this? Still eats up your FP and stamina, without the performance to show for it. Furious Blade of Ansbach now recovers a whole 12 frames faster, which is nice for a melee-based incantation. The knockback distance is increased, and the poise damage is also increased slightly, depending on the hit. I don't think Midra's Frenzy Flame performs that well in terms of damage, because of its spread out nature, so this buff is welcomed. But Unendurable Frenzy is still better for focused damage. Even after the Frenzy status build-up decrease, Midra's still builds up madness quite quickly on yourself. The direct hit portion of Bale's Flame Lightning is buffed for all 3 of its damage types, which might just make it worth using for how cool this incantation looks. And finally, a few notes on bug fixes. If I miss any important ones, do comment down below so I can highlight your comment. Lizard Greatsword's physical damage types for attacks that used to do standard has turned to strike damage. Its heavy attacks still do pierce damage though. Bale's Tyranny was a bit weird in that it used to only hit one target, despite looking very much like an AoE incantation. It is now an AoE as intended. I mentioned this last patch note. Godfrey Icon didn't work with spells like Spectral Rings of Light. Happy to say, it is now fixed. Like and subscribe. If you want to support my work, please consider buying my fantasy novel or donating to my Patreon down below. With a book purchase, you can also request a topic from me. Krite, signing out.